to our ORT webinar this morning with Laurie Milner. Just for those of you, although I see quite a lot of familiar faces, for those of you that are not aware of the work that ORT does in Cape Town, I thought I would just give you a brief overview. We mainly focus on 3 areas. So we run a mentorship program for any Jewish person running their own business. And we also offer training and networking for anybody in the community. During lockdown at the moment, we've been running these webinars, and of course they're open to anybody, whether you're in or not in our community. We're happy to welcome everybody. So just to kick off, a little bit of housekeeping, if you can all please remain muted. And any questions that you have for Laurie, please put them in the chat box and we will address them at the end of her talk. So just a very big welcome to you, Laurie. Thank you for your time this morning. And again, another advantage of the lockdown is that we were able to push this talk forward, not have to wait for you to come down to Cape Town. So very excited. And feel privileged to be listening to you this morning.
Thank
you. To tell you all a little bit about Laurie, she is an author, trainer, and a self-leadership expert. Laurie is passionate about empowering women and equipping diverse teams with the tools and skills to fulfill their potential and their careers and personal lives. Beyond the dress, has worked with some of South Africa's top listed companies, and empowered hundreds of employees with valuable insights on how to bridge the gap between work and personal life, which I think couldn't be more relevant than now. So thank you and welcome, and over to you.
Thanks. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you to Brenna. Thank you to Lisa for the invitation and for being able to be with you this morning. As we know, we're here to discuss the stress management toolkit. So I'm going to share some slides with you. I'm going to bounce in and out of the slides. As Lisa said, if there's any questions, please put them in the chat and I will leave time at the end so that we can get to them. So I'm going to go ahead and share. Are we sharing? Can you see? Yeah. Thank you. So I think, you know, the interesting thing is when we first went into lockdown, there was this assumption that we were going to have more time available to ourselves because we thought, well, I don't have the commute. And very quickly we realized that's not the case at all. Some of us are on our own. Some of us have got our families at home, kids, etc. And so the circumstances have become a lot more challenging than we used to. I think being an entrepreneur, it's probably, I'm sure a lot of us were working from home or working remotely before, but this has taken it to a new level. And we keep talking about the new normal, but there's nothing normal about it, and we are still in the new. And where we need to start having a mindset shift is that we cannot use old tools to navigate where we are now. And that's what I want to take you through this morning is what are some new tools, new tactics we can do to start making sure that we are owning our days and not feel like we are constantly working around the clock and that the days are owning us. So the first tool is being able to set a quitting time. And if you even think to the beginning of the year, for the last few years, how many times have we been complaining about this concept of work-life balance? Let me come out of the slide and chat to you. We've been complaining about work-life balance forever. And that was before work and life were separated. And now we find ourselves in one location. And if we don't start to take charge of how we're managing our days, we're going to land up in overwhelm, and I'm sure we already are. And it's about deciding, when is my workday going to start and when is my workday going to finish? And I know as entrepreneurs, we feel like, well, I can't switch off. I can't stop. If I don't stop, what's going to happen to the business? But in terms of managing our stress, it's something that we really need to insert into the day. So decide, right, when is that workday starting? When does it finish? Whatever that time is for you, But then it's about being able to give yourself permission. So if you decide at 6 o'clock, right, that is my downtime now, that is my off time, it's having that discipline to not keep running to the laptop and going, let me just check one more mail. Has something come in? Has something urgent come in? And it's when we're on this constant going, the cortisol spikes, that's when all the other health factors start to come up. And it's not only setting a start and an end time to the day, but it's also setting boundaries. So for me, stress management is about that boundary management. And it's about deciding, number one, when and how often we are checking our mails, we are checking our phones. And I know we've always got this thought at the back of our minds, but if I'm not checking email all the time, what if I miss something? But I think you also need to look at it and saying, okay, well, if you keep checking mails at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night and responding to them, it's going to start to become your norm. And there's going to be those days where you've, a fire and you've got to put it out and a customer needs something urgent. And we have those days. But if every single time, if we're not giving ourselves the downtime, because downtime is not just about relaxing, it's about recovery. And when you can switch off your mind, park work in one place for the day, that is when you generate new ideas and new insights, is in your recovery time. Because we seldom have our best ideas at work. And it's also not letting, and I'll get into that in our next slide now. Next thing we need to do is making sure we're controlling the environment. And there's a great quote up on the screen from Marshall Goldsmith, that if we are not controlling the environment, it will control us. And what do I mean by that? Sometimes some of us have got different rooms available where there's a place for rest, there's a place for eating, there's a place for work. Some of us are in situations where everything is all happening on top of each other. So it's not about where we're sitting and getting our stuff done, but it's about how are you setting up that environment for absolute productivity and absolute success. So for example, when you sit down and you've got a task or something to get out, one way to manage the environment is to manage distraction. And I think we've gotten to the point where we are self-interrupters. So think about how many times you start something, your phone goes, it's a WhatsApp, it's a social media alert, it's a Facebook something, an Instagram something, an SMS. And we get into the start-stop rhythm. And that's why we feel like we're not getting anything done as well, because as we start, you hear a bing and you think, well, it must be something urgent. So what we can start to do is close your Outlook. If you are working on something, and I'll go into more detail just now, close Outlook, close your social media feeds. That is interrupting your day. I've muted majority of all the chats sitting on my phone, because think about how many WhatsApp chats we have now. I'll come out of here. We've got one for work, probably some, not a client chat, but maybe colleagues. We've got for schools, if we've got kids. We've got the family chat. There's the friends chat. And a lot of the time people feel that, they like to send jokes or they like to send things or it's commentary. And most of the time it's not urgent. So get into the habit of muting those chats. And then when you are ready, you check in, because it's about managing how are we constantly reacting to other people's urgencies rather than our own. Other things we can do to set up the environment for success. If we want to, health and looking after our immune system is absolutely pivotal during this time. Do you have a glass of water, jug of water sitting on the table? Do you have a bowl of healthy snacks? If you've decided as a family or an individual, I want to make sure that I'm leaving lockdown in good health, is there a bowl of apples sitting in the kitchen rather than a bag of chips or a bag of chuckles? So how are we setting up the environment to make sure that we are attaining the goals that we want, instead of, we get tired and then we reach for the first thing that we can find. We think it's going to boost us, but in fact, it's going to drop us. And that's how we start to hamper productivity. Even with your kids, think about how are you managing their distractions. Think about, are you getting them to focus on one thing at a time? I originally had my son, so my kids are 7 and 5. He's in grade 1. And I originally had him sitting in the playroom. And after day 1, I realized I'm not managing his environment because there's too much around for him to do. So now he's sitting at a plastic table in the lounge, nothing around him other than his iPad for his lessons and whatever book is available. So think, how can you extend this to other people in your house as well? Another really important question we need to ask ourselves is, what if we stopped celebrating being busy as a measurement of importance? And I think it's about making that distinction between, we feel like if we are slowing down in any way, if we are pausing, we feel like we're not doing enough. And it's this constant do that makes us feel like, well, if I'm busy, then I must be productive. But sometimes we know that we can, if you take 2 hours or 3 hours of really focused time and attention, is going to go a lot further to mindless busy work. And it really is about prioritizing. And it's about, so if I said to you, think about the things you need to do in a day, and I said to you, here's a glass jar. You've got to fit into this glass jar rocks, some pebbles, and some sand. If you start with the sand and the pebbles, there's not going to be any space to fit the rocks in. But if you started with the rocks, then the pebbles, and then any space in between, the sand came in, it filtered in between, that's how you'll do it. And it's the same with how we spend our days. We cannot base our days around the minutiae, about the little things. We have to focus our days around the big rocks, the big priorities, especially having the added, whether you've got kids in the house, whether you're doing homework, whether it's housework, those other things that come into play as well, really being specific about, okay, what are those things that I can do today that is going to move the needle? What can I do today that's going to move my business in the right direction? Which brings me to the question of a to-do list. And how often, so hands up, if you don't mind, how many of you use a to-do list? Okay, most of your cameras are off, but I'm assuming most of you have got your hands up. And the problem with a to-do list is that it starts to become a guilt list, and it starts to become a survival list rather than a strategic list to get us through the day. And often the first thing we thought about is the first thing that's sitting at the top of that list. It's not necessarily the most important thing. So I want you to replace your to-do list with a success list. And the difference is a success list is incredibly short. You should have no more than 3 big items to get done in a day. Because if you can put real time and attention into your big 3 things, again, that's how we're going to start to create progress. And as soon as we're creating progress, we create momentum. And that is where we start to manage our stress better. So how do we do this? So now once you've got your success list, right, this is the simplest tool, and I'm sure you're doing it. And often a lot of what I'm talking about today is not revelations, it's stuff we know. But with the overwhelm of where we are now, we don't always sit and think about the obvious. We don't always go back to the basics. And am I sharing? Yes. And it's about taking your calendar, and then taking those big 3 things and scheduling them in. It's being deciding whatever gets scheduled gets done. And that is for life and for your business goals. So these are some tips that you can do in terms of scheduling. Put your most important task right in the beginning of the day. And the beginning of the day could be after you've started homework. It's your time that works for you. But this is the key. When you sit down, so right, I've got to get this proposal out to this customer. I've got to get this quotation done. Sit down, schedule it, right? You can see it. This is when it's happening in my day. But do not open your inbox before you start that priority, because what turns into one focused attention lands up now becoming 7 or 8. And it's often other people's urgencies, not necessarily our own. And then you don't know where to start. So get that task done, make some progress for your day, boost your confidence. Then as your reward, then you're going to move on to your inbox. And if you're thinking, but what if I miss something urgent? People will phone you. They will message you. They will get hold of you if it is urgent. Start to schedule tasks around energy levels. So some of us are morning people. Some of us are better in the afternoon. If you've got a really big, thinking project, a thinking task you need to get through, put that at the time of the day when you are alert, you're awake, you can put good focus into it. Leave gaps in your calendar. White space scares a lot of people because we feel like, well, why isn't it filled? But you got to leave white space in the day because we know stuff is going to come up, whether that is work or personal stuff. Try avoid the back-to-back meetings. I know we're sitting in Zoom sessions now, and a lot of clients that I've spoken to over the last few weeks, it's 4 o'clock and they're going, I haven't sat up, I haven't got up for 15 minutes, I've got up once throughout the whole day. So try and not get into that mode of back-to-back meetings and then you still need to get your work done. So another interesting thing what you can do is plan where your time can't go. So what you want to do is plan your week before you are in it. So take a Friday afternoon, not much happens on a Friday, take a Sunday and take your calendar out and have a look and go, right, what are the things that I have to get done this week? But in addition to that, you're going to put in your personal time. You're going to put in kids' homework. You're going to put in meetings. You're going to put in everything so that once you look at your calendar, you've got a realistic bird's eye view of, oh, okay, these are where I can now start to plug in my things. Because again, what we do is we have an unrealistic number of things we think we can get done in a day, not really taking into account what time is available to us, because we've got other priorities, we've got other things we need to be worrying about now. So the more realistic you can be about what gaps are available, and also the reason why planning your week and seeing where is available is, I call it, then you develop a mindset of time abundance rather than time scarcity, because we're sitting in this mode now where we're constantly feeling like, I don't have enough time, I'm busy, I'm overwhelmed, I've got to get it done. But, and especially if you sit down to get something done and there's a disturbance or a distraction or something takes away that block of time you thought you had, we start to panic in, when am I going to get it done? But when you know at the back of your mind, okay, but I know that there was that gap available 3 on Tuesday if I need it, you can in the moment go, okay, don't worry, take out calendar, schedule it in. So you can start to manage your mind as much as your calendar. Schedule your planning time. I think often we feel like, well, we're constantly feeling like I'm too busy to plan, but take that hour, sit down and half an hour even of figuring out where your week is going to go. And the week will change. I put at the bottom there, we've got to be flexible. We've got to be open-minded, but the more you can plan, the more strategic you can be. And then you've got to schedule me time. And I'm going to talk about that in more detail just now. And even during this time, is there a goal? Is there a skill set? Is there a hobby? Is there something that you need for you as well? Because that has to be scheduled in. Where are you creating some energy for yourself? Where are you energizing yourself? Because it's not going to come from anywhere else. So we spoke about just now this concept of a to-do list, right? But this goes further, and I want you to think about, what about a to-be list? And it's about thinking, who do I want to be during this time? How do I want to show up? How do I want to show up for my clients? How do I want to show up for my family? Because that extends into a to-feel list. And really, I think what we understand, having gone through this process for so long, is how do we want to feel at the end of each day? Overwhelmed, stressed, exhausted? Or do we want to feel energized? Do we want to feel grateful? Do we want to feel happiness? We're allowed to have that. And the gap between where you may be feeling now and where you want to feel at the end of each day lies in the activities that are sitting in your calendar. So if you say, well, I really want to feel energetic, what are you doing? What are you doing to enable that? If you want to feel more relaxed at the end of each day, what are you doing every day to make sure that you are doing it? Is there meditation? Is there relaxation? Is there time for exercise? And that's what we need to see, is that, yes, we go, well, I'd love to show up this way, but it has to translate into behavior and the things that we're doing. Let's go back to the present. Something else that I wanted to discuss, which comes up all the time, is that in the midst of overwhelm, even though we have every great intention to be as busy as we can, procrastination is very real and it happens to all of us. And 2 interesting points is that procrastination is not a time management issue. It's actually an emotion management issue. Because if you think, so number 1, I'll go a step back. Procrastination is actually a stress management tool. Because right now we've got a lot of stress. We're worrying about our business. We're worrying about our health. We're worrying about family who aren't close to us. I mean, you can fill in the rest. And so what starts to happen is we spend all day and we're thinking about these things are going on repeat and they're looping. Then we sit down the next morning and we've got to get this presentation done. And so you sit down and the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain responsible for big decision making, goes, oh, but I've been thinking about mom all day. I'm exhausted. Please, can we just watch cat videos for 5 minutes? And so what you find yourself doing is you go, okay, and you go into social media or you go into the endless Google search, and an hour passes, 2 hours pass, and you kind of wake up to what you're doing and you go, oh my God, I haven't done anything. And the self-loathing begins. And what we need to realize is that we cannot change stress. Stress has been here before COVID. It's going to be here afterwards. Where we need to shift the pattern is creating a starting ritual. And it's just about saying to yourself, right, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to work for 5 minutes. And if you can sit down and work for 5 minutes, research shows 80% of you will carry on with that task. And that's why it becomes an emotion management issue, because maybe you associate overwhelm with the task, anxiety with the task, frustration with the task, boredom, fear of perfection, fear of failure. And to avoid the feeling, we start to avoid the task. And the way forward is to literally chunk it down. So if you've got to do a presentation for a customer, don't think the presentation. Think, okay, all I'm going to do for the next 5 to 10 minutes is write down the 5 main slides I want to talk about. Done. And that is what I call a micro win, because you've created progress. You can celebrate that. Oh my God, I've started. Right. Now that I've started, next time you come back to it, you've got, right, these are my big 5 slides. What are the 3 main points I want to put under each slide? You celebrate that win. And that is how we start to move forward. And it's when we have progress, that is how we build confidence. That is how we move through the day. And it's also about interpreting what blocks of time are available to us, because sometimes we don't have this luxury of long stretches. But if you just have a 20-minute gap that pops up, or you create a 20-minute gap, don't think to yourself, oh, it's just 20 minutes. There's no point in doing something. Pull out that thing you started, right? In 20 minutes, you can get a lot further because you've started and you've built that momentum. And this brings me to the next thing. You are your business. You may be thinking right now, I don't have time. I am too busy to look after me. But if something does happen, if your health is compromised, who is looking after your family? Who is looking after your business? And self-care is how we start to show up to ourselves, and it's not selfish. And what I mean by self-care is it's about saying, right, I'm going to take my calendar and I'm going to schedule in 15 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, whatever you have available to you. And it's putting that block into the calendar. But when it pops up, it's about having that self-discipline to go, you know what? I'm going to stick to this, not, oh, it's only me. I'm too busy. Let me do it later. And the later never, ever happens. And so you might be thinking to yourself, I don't have time. Where am I supposed to fit it in? So I want to ask you, do you think you can create 15 minutes a day? If you check social media less, if you're checking mail less, checking social media less, checking WhatsApps less, can we find 15 minutes in a day? And I'm sure we all can. So now the next trick is about saying, right, where am I going to find time for this? And the secret to that is to own your mornings. If you can own if you can do an hour, but if you can own the first 20 minutes of your day, you win the day. And I know it sounds like a cliche and you might have read that a lot, but the mornings tend to unfold in more predictable ways. And the mornings is where everyone is asleep, the office is asleep, the client, no one is there to bug you at 6 o'clock in the morning. So if you can start to train yourself to wake up 30 minutes earlier than your normal starting time, that is where you start to make progress on what matters to you. It could be exercise, it could be meditation, it could be journaling, it could be that's your strategic planning, it could be reading, it could be maybe you wanted to do an online course. That is where you take the time to make progress, because the reason we do that is how you put yourself into a peak state for the rest of the day. So if you are we're all feeling overwhelmed, but if you start your day hitting snooze, if you start your day first thing grabbing your phone and seeing what what everyone else is expecting of you. You start your day in react mode rather than going, I'm taking control of my day and I'm putting myself into a peak state. And also mornings are better because willpower is a muscle. And like any muscle, by the end of the day, it starts to get depleted from overuse. So that is where mornings come from. And another way, if you think self-care sounds selfish, another way to think about self-care is energy management. It's movement. It is nutrition, what we're putting into our body. It is about sleep. And guys, you need to have 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night. And do not roll your eyes. So it's about, because if you're thinking that you can get by on 5 to 6 hours, it's something that you've trained yourself to do. It's not optimum productivity. So you may need to stop binge watching Netflix till 11 so that you can get a good night's sleep, so that you can wake up earlier and start making progress on yourself. And a lot of this, right? Well, I know I should schedule it into the morning. I know we know what we should be doing, but there is a gap. And the gap is it's not enough to schedule yourself into the calendar. The key lies in showing up to yourself. So if you set your alarm for 6 tomorrow morning, 6:30, and when that alarm goes off, we know this movie, you pick up your phone and you hit snooze, and then you wake up at 7 in a panic. And the one time puts you in this downward spiral for the day. And so because you are disappointed that you missed that session. And so we start to procrastinate. You figure, oh, well, I'll toss the whole day, and you go get the donut. And then you're irritated about the donut, and then the self-loathing begins and the inner critic shows up. And so it's really simple. If you want to follow through on something, shut down the sabotaging conversation that goes on in your head before you start. So make a really specific decision about something you want to do and do not question it. Your mind will tell you it's cold. It's going to tell you it's early. Don't wait to feel like it. Do it anyway. And the reason why is that is when we build confidence. It is in keeping the promises we make to ourselves. That is how we boost confidence. It's when you let yourself down, that's when you dent your self-esteem, and that's when it plays out in other areas. But stress management is not just about productivity. It's not just about time. It's managing our minds as well. And there's a lot of anxiety rampant at the moment. And I'm not talking about chronic anxiety. I'm talking about those looping thoughts, those looping patterns. And anxiety is not a character defect. It's an emotion. And it affects A-type, high-level, highly successful people because we want to control our worlds, especially as entrepreneurs. And I know for me, when anxiety shows up, it's there to show me one of two things. Either my degree for control is too amplified, or I'm too future focused. And so what do we do? What can we do about it? Create an anxiety spreadsheet. So what you want to do is figure out and go, okay, what I know, what I don't know, what I can influence, what I can't control. And we know often all we can control in the moment is our breathing and our reaction. How are we going to respond to something? We cannot control if someone gets sick. We cannot control the economy. We cannot control what's happening to our businesses. But you've got to think to yourself, right, where is there a gap? So what don't I know? Where can I plug that? Where can I control? And take action on those things. But the things that we have no control over, do not waste your energy worrying about it. And so what are some things we can control right now in our businesses? I said to you, how do you want to show up? Who do you want to be? You can show leadership in crisis and uncertainty. You can be a leader to your customers. You can be a leader to your family, and you're going to be leading yourself. Schedule in time every day to network. So if you take 15 minutes a day and you put that into your calendar and you are actively networking, it's perhaps some of it is about reaching out to new customers, but have you gone back into your old client bases? And it's not about selling them something. It's about reaching out and touching base and going, hey, how are you doing during COVID? Hey, how are you managing with things? Just a reminder, I'm here if you need me. And there's a phenomenal networking course. It's free. If you go to jordanharbinger.com, Harbinger, and it's called 6-Minute Networking. It is a free course. it is absolutely brilliant about how you can work your network at the moment. Think to yourself, okay, where can I add value to customers? I can control that. Are you sending out, can you send them articles? Can you send them industry related things and say, hey, thought you'd find this relevant? Because maybe we can't, maybe we're limited in terms of what we can do at the moment, but where can you add value every day? Are you sending newsletters? Can you create videos? What can you do online? Can you, if you can't control, maybe you're in a restaurant, can you pivot that? Can you do something else? And I'm sure you've thought about it, but if you can't control your day-to-day norm, what else can you start to do? You can build your brand. You can start to develop yourself as a thought leader during this time. Use platforms like LinkedIn. Can you write thought leadership pieces? You don't have to be a great writer, but you can start to connect on LinkedIn. You can start to write pieces that put you out there as an expert. What can you do every day to start building your brand? And also, this gives you an opportunity to work on the business. Sometimes we're so caught up in the day-to-day. So think about, right, if you've got the luxury of taking a step back, are there processes that we can fix? Are there bottlenecks that have been coming for ages? Can you reach out to your teams, your customers? What can you do to start working on the business during this time so that when you emerge, you are even stronger than before? Are there collaborations that make sense? Can you reach out to someone else at this point? Also, what you can do is build a new skill set. So what can you be doing during this time? Because if you think, who do I want to be? Maybe it's looking at a new skill that you need to develop so that you can start to step into that person. And it really is about thinking, what is the story I'm telling myself now? Because, and that is about questioning old thoughts, old belief systems. When did we make those beliefs? When did we decide what we're capable of? And it's stories like, I'm too old. It's stories like, well, I'm too young. It's stories like, well, I'm an introvert. I'm bad at maths. I'm not good in front of a camera. And the problem with those kind of stories, especially now, is it's going to limit you in terms of how you show up, what you're going to put yourself out there for. I do meditation lessons with woman Patsy every week. Patsy's in her early 70s. And beginning of lockdown, we had to go into Zoom sessions. And now she's YouTubing her classes. And she said, I never thought that I would have my own YouTube channel and my classes are there. So don't put yourself in a box. What is the story you're telling yourself? How do you change it so that you can give yourself permission to show up to the things that you really want? And when we get into those down days, because we're going to have those down days, that's the thing with lockdown, is you think, I finally got it. I feel like I'm getting the hang of it. And then you have a day where you just feel like your walls are crashing down. And what you want to do is change focus with a better question. So instead of, why am I self-sabotaging? Why does this happen to me? What can I do to connect with my customers? What can I do to connect with my family? What can I learn during this time? And as soon as you change the focus, you start to change how you're seeing things. And really, guys, intention is everything. So I've said, who do we want to be? And it's asking yourself the kind of questions like, how do I want to emerge from lockdown? How do I want to remember this time? How do I want my customers to remember me? How do I want my family to remember this time? And then what are we doing to build that experience? And the way that we set an intention is you can journal, write about your goals, write about your future self, because that helps us make better decisions today. But set an alarm to go off a few times during the day to go bold, confident, courageous. That's who I want to be during this time. Or maybe it's about being more nurturing. Maybe it's about being kind. I know what I have to do at about 6 o'clock every day. I set an alarm that goes off, and I forget it every day that it goes off, about being nurturing, kind, and patient. Because after a long day, at that point in the day, when everyone, my kids think it's funny to play games during teeth or not want to listen, I need to remind myself, who am I showing up as? What do they need now? And really what's incredibly important, I spoke about, part of creating this person you want to be, part of being this great brand is moving from a fixed mindset into a growth mindset. And a fixed mindset really is about having that perception that these are the skills I have, these are my strengths, these are my weaknesses, I can't change it. But a growth mindset is going, where can I develop a skill set? Maybe I'm not great at video now, I've never done it. But if I go on and do a course, if I do maybe just practice doing some talks every day, I can get better. And it's just that belief that you can start something and get better along the way. You are not fixed into where you are, and that you can grow into it. So what I can do is share the slides with Lisa and Brenna, and you can go through this in your own time. But really, and I just ruined the surprise, if you think about where you are now, and you draw a circle and you go, this is me now, my business, my skills, my financial situation, my family, everything in our world right now is in this circle. And if you and then you draw a circle outside of that and you go, this is what I want. This is what I'm aiming towards, where I want to see my business, my mental state, my health, my family, everything that we're aiming towards, the holidays we want to take when we are in lockdown. The circle, the first one, is our comfort zone. But the outer circle is our courage zone. And I think where we are now is about changing your story to move from the one to the other, because it takes great courage. It's petrifying in terms of how we have to operate now. We are our businesses. You are everything. But you also got to think, is what you're doing up till now serving you? Is this constant working around the clock serving you? What can you do differently? How can you step out of what you're doing? And maybe that, it's finding a different skill, finding a different way of doing things, finding a different way of serving, but giving yourself permission to step into that courage zone. And then it comes down to accountability. This is about, we have to choose how we want to show up every day. And it's about not only being accountable to ourselves, but find an accountability buddy. Reach out to someone, especially this amazing community of ORT, and say to them, I'm thinking about doing this habit. I'm thinking about starting this thing. I'm going to write this book, whatever it is, whatever's going to fuel your soul, and share it with someone. And when and then agree with them and say, okay, every Friday, let's check in with each other and see where we're at. Because when someone is watching, you tend to make a lot more effort, and we're not in this alone. So set up, it's not only about how we're accountable to ourselves, but can you be that person for someone else as well, and who needs you during this time? And this is the difference between, one day I'm going to do this and day one of it. And so to end with a beautiful quote from Goethe saying, whatever you think you can do or believe you can, action has magic, grace, and power in it. So I think that, the secret to stress management is understanding we can't change the stress, but we can work on the to be list, the to feel list, and making sure that we're assessing where in our day is working, where in our day is not working. What can we do differently? How can we start to show up in a way that we're going to be proud when we walk out of lockdown? So that is, we've come to, I said 40 minutes to Lisa and Brenna. So guys, I really honor you for showing up today, for being here, for working on yourselves, for taking the time. Lisa, are there any questions that have come up during the chat? Is there anything specific anybody wants further information on? I know it felt like a lot, but for me, it was just, what are the crucial tools we can start thinking about now so that tomorrow you've got an action plan. It's not same.
Thanks, Laurie. There is a comment, not really a question, more a comment in the chat box from someone who says, I really believe there is enough time in a day to prioritize that things that are most important to us. Completely agree about the mornings. I started waking up earlier, having a nice coffee, listened to a podcast or music, or meditated before heading to the gym. By 8:30, I already felt like I'd had
Wow.
had achieved so much.
That's unbelievable. Absolutely. And I think to go on your first point, there's a quote by a woman named Debbie Milner, and she said, busy is a decision. We decide what we want to do based on what we think are the priorities in our lives. And so if we're too busy to paint a painting or read a book, we've got to think, how important is it to us? Is, watching Netflix more important? And I think as from that beautiful comment, we will make time for the things that matter. And I think it's being able to take a step back and to decide and putting yourself in the calendar. I think that, and especially as entrepreneurs, it's incredibly hard to do. And that's why we often feel like there is no balance, is because we're not showing up enough in that schedule, or we feel guilty. Or if I take time for myself, I'm taking away time from the business. How can I possibly spend time here? And it's not spending time on yourself, it's investing in yourself. And if it's 5 minutes, it's not about, and the bridge between how we start to build progress is around consistency. So it's not about, I've only got 10 minutes. If you've got 10 minutes every single day or 3 times a week, and you're using that 10 minutes to listen to the podcast, do a meditation, walk, read something, watch a TED talk, but also, what are you doing to inspire yourself every day? What are you doing to energize yourself every day? Because I think the absolute reality is that we cannot rely on anyone else or anything else to fuel us. It's got to come from us, and it's got to come from putting yourself in a peak state, whatever that may be. Also, a tool like journaling is incredibly powerful. And really all it is, take a piece of paper, take a normal scrapbook, and there's no right or wrong way of doing it. I've been journaling every day for years, and every morning it is part of my morning routine. And I write down what's bothering me, what's on my mind, what do I want to do that day? And it just completely fluctuates. It makes absolutely no sense, but I've brain dumped. And the power about when you journal is that you're getting the thoughts out of your mind and you're trapping them on paper. So you're not looping through that anxiety. What about this? What happened with the customer? What's the best way to deal with it? And it's a way to try to work through things. And maybe you don't get an aha at the end of it, but it's a way to release those thoughts so that it's not draining your energy the rest of the day.
Thank you. Fantastic talk. Thank you. Is it okay to say no to a client who wants help now, in exclamation marks and capital letters? What if we lose them? What if we lose them?
I think, are they asking, so I'm going to ask the question, are they asking you to work for free? Are they, and I think, there's a very fine line during this time. And I think number one, absolutely, you can say no. I think it's crucial that we learn to say no, but it's the way in which we do it. And so I think number one, if someone is asking, and everyone is strapped for money at the moment, or not everybody can pay, and they're saying, oh, well, can't you do me a favor? It's a tough one, because there's a part of us that thinks, well, if I don't show up for them now, I'll lose the client. And maybe you can come to the party once. Maybe you could help in a small way. Maybe there is something that you can do. But the problem is that if you say yes, and you give of your time, and you give of your energy, and you're not being remunerated or appreciated in the normal manner, it's number one, going to get taken for granted. And often what happens is this 80-20 rule. And this client starts taking, they start expecting more than they expect more. And so you're pouring hours into something where you're not getting value out of it. You're draining yourself, and you're not being able to put that time into something better. And it's also about thinking long-term, and it's about going, okay, well, if I do this for free, what's going to happen after lockdown? At what point can you start to go, okay, well, things are better now. These are my normal rates. And they'll go, oh, no. But, then they get used to the old way of doing it. And so I think every situation is incredibly unique. I think it also depends on how long have you had this relationship? How long have you had this client? If they've been with you from day one, then I think it's absolutely fine to find a way to give back and reciprocate in where you can. but you need to know that line of being of service and being taken advantage of. And you are well in your rights, because it's if you think about your time, if you're saying yes, if we give away our yeses too easily, we're going to have nothing left for ourselves. And so it's about a strategic no, and it's about saying no. I'd absolutely love to. At this point, I don't have the capacity. I'm not available. Let me know when you can. Or how else can you be of service? Here are some links. Here are some websites. Here are some resources I came across that could be really valuable to you right now. And if you don't say no, they'll find the next person that they may guilt into or emotionally blackmail into working under false duress. But even if you think about saying no in terms of from a social point of view, it's about protecting your boundaries. And if, I always say, am I saying yes out of guilt or fear? If I'm saying yes to something out of guilt or fear, I should probably be saying no. And, it's about saying thanks so much. If someone asks you to, I don't know, play a game or do something on a weekend or come and join, this bridge, whatever, you could say thanks so much for the invite and for thinking of me. Unfortunately, I'm occupied during this time. I've made a commitment. This is my family time. I really just need some R&R for me. Please think of me for the next time, because I'd love to support you. But we cannot say yes to everything now. And maybe it feels like, well, I don't have an excuse about travel, or I don't have an excuse about this, and I'm home and they know that I'm home. But you need, going back to priorities, you need to decide where your time and energy is going. And it's okay to say no to do something for you. And it's not easy, but if we can practice saying no with compassion and making sure that we don't want the other person to feel let down or personally attacked. But saying no is so important. So I'm really glad you asked that question.
And another question that's come to me, and I know you touched on this quite a bit, but if you could just maybe recap, because I think we could all learn from your insights, is how do I stop working round the clock?
So I think a lot of what I've spoken about is to stop you working around the clock. I think number one is taking breaks, is allowing yourself to take breaks. We should be taking breaks every 50 minutes. And a break could be as little as like 10, 15 minutes, but after 50 minutes, get up, stretch. Because also think what tends to happen is when we're sitting, and be aware of your posture, be aware of where the laptop is, if you're on a laptop, an iPad, whatever, that your shoulders aren't sitting like this, that you're not clenching your jaw. Because it's when we're sitting in a bad position or sitting in a bad posture for too long, it starts to really affect us. So get up, walk around, change environment, walk into a different room, get a big glass of water. So number one, get used to taking breaks every 50 minutes. It will not slow you down. It will make you more productive. Definitely commit to some sort of a morning routine. You may say you're not a morning person, but you can train yourself to become a morning person. You really, really can. It's not nice in the beginning. So it takes about 90 seconds to push through that horrible feeling when the alarm goes off, but just steamroll your way through it. Find the why you want to get up and do things differently. It could be an image. It could be a picture of what you want your business to look like. It could be the health, the vitality you want to feel. And then you've got to build in recovery times, and also think about strategically, what are you doing in your breaks? So when you do take a break, give yourself a little bit of time if you want to do some mindless web searching, things like that. But a break is not going through emails. A break is not launching into another project for another client that then pulls you in. Give yourself a real 15-minute switch off, move back into it. Managing your sleep. So saying no was a big one. Also managing your meetings. I think a lot of us, I'm not sure if a lot of you are sitting around the clock from meeting after meeting after meeting. If you are, some things to think about is, not every meeting needs to be an hour. Just because, we may default to that. Can we do something in 15 minutes? can we have an agenda? If you've got a team meeting, can you send that out to your team? Or if it's a customer, if it's a client, whoever you're having a meeting with, have an agenda set. What are we talking about now? Not that it's a meeting about a meeting and then we need another meeting. So be incredibly concise in terms of what do we need to discuss. I'm not saying there's not room for social and see how they're doing and check in, but be strategic in terms of why that meeting is happening and how long it actually needs to be. I've spoken about taking breaks, setting boundaries, the quitting time, and just, I think it's about giving yourself permission. I think it really comes down to not feeling guilty when you are not working. I think it's also allowing yourself, because also when you keep working around the clock, you not seeing the special moments in your day, or think to yourself, okay, well, when I am sitting down with my family, if you've got family at home, if you don't, if you're sitting on your own, but even if you're talking to someone telephonically, are you really there? Are you present? Or are you going, you're sitting there reading a bedtime story, but your mind is in everything you need to get done tomorrow. Your mind is, what do I need to get done tonight? And and especially kids, they'll call you on it. They can see when your attention is not there. And it's not just work. It's, okay, what am I missing out on? What are the moments I'm missing because I'm forcing myself with this constant grind? And I think it really is. And for me, I think if there's one thing to say in terms of to stop working around the clock, is that we need to practice being kinder to ourselves. We need to practice a little bit more compassion towards ourselves. I mean, if you imagine you've got your partner or a close colleague sitting at the table with you, and every time they stood up to go get a snack or take a break, you go, sit down. Are we doing the same things to ourselves? Are we being nice to ourselves? It's in daily acts of kindness, and kindness is allowing yourself a breather. Kindness is allowing yourself to go, you know what? I love painting. I love doing this. I'm just going to sit down and maybe I'm going to take off an afternoon, or maybe I need a morning to just focus on me. And when you come back from that, even if it's an hour, you are energized and refreshed and ready to go. And if you can practice more acts of self-kindness every day, you will allow yourself to stop working around the clock.
Well, thank you so much. This has been an incredible hour just to listen to you. The comments have been incredible, which I will share with you afterwards.
Thank you.
And if everyone has found
one thing, I'll send the slides, but just if you guys want, I've got a newsletter that I send out every Tuesday. It comes out once a week. It's insightful. It's all things we can do now around COVID. If you just go on to beyondthedress.co.za, and if you sign up to the newsletter, it'll come into your inbox every Tuesday at 11, and just some nuggets, some wisdom, some inspiration, some upliftment to get you through for the following week. But at least thank you, and to Brenna and to everybody who was here, and for your time and attention. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been amazing.
Thanks, Lise.
Thanks everyone for joining us. We'll see you at the next one next week. All the best. Bye.